I shy away from telling my story often because as fast and as hard as it was, I recovered unbelievably quickly for what the condition was. I think I was just very lucky. I think a lot of things aligned in my favor. First symptom to last symptom, just over 2 months. That's faster than anyone whom I've talked to. That's faster than a lot of the medical professionals thought it would be. Even the physiotherapists and occupational therapists said that they were surprised at how quickly everything was progressing. It took some time to get started, but then once it started, it flew. I woke up with a few symptoms at once. My toes were tingly and my back was really sore. And I thought that I'd pinched a nerve or I tweaked something. I was very dismissive about it. I went to a chiropractor that day. I said, I pinched something, I don't know. He did the adjustment, I left, and it was the next morning I called him back and I said, I don't know, I think we made it worse because now my fingers are tingly and my toes are tingly and my back still hurts. That, I think, was his first indication that, no, this isn't a nerve, this is something a bit more serious. So I went to the first hospital and the doctors looked at me in the ER and they weren't really sure what it was. I had some reflexes in my knees, they were just a bit delayed. They said it's probably a funny feeling, you can go home and just come back if it gets worse. I think we got home at 11 that night and I went to bed, and at 5 the next morning, I was waking my parents up again saying, I don't know what it is, something's still wrong. We phoned around. I was really lucky. I had practitioners in the family. So we phoned an aunt as well as a cousin, explained everything that was happening, asked their professional opinion, and they right away, I think they both actually pegged it as GBS just through the phone. And we were really lucky because they told us which hospital to go to. They told us what some of the key words to mention to the ER staff were. Once getting to the second hospital, I could still walk, but I walked a little bit like a drunk penguin. My hips were sliding all over the place. It was this like slow sludge. My feet were walking, but they weren't making big steps. It was like a sliding step. We did an MRI within the first few hours. They immediately admitted me. We did a spinal tap, I think, the next morning to confirm what they had all said was GBS. The longest wait time was just waiting for the order to go through for the IVIG. We did the treatment of 6 bottles over 2 days, and it was hard on my body, but it was for the better, and I recognize that. And it was only after that treatment that the face paralysis set in, and then there's like a waiting time. I think we waited 2 weeks to start seeing the results, and then at that point I was transferred to a rehab hospital where the physio and occupational therapy was strict, to say the least. When they first diagnosed it, a resident came in and he said, we're fairly certain it's this condition called GBS. It's usually recoverable, but you should be aware that you might not get that feeling back. We thought, okay, that's a lot to digest, especially because 3 days prior there was nothing at all. Even once we started treatment, the first couple doctors said, okay, you know what, you're in it for the long haul. You're gonna recover, but it's gonna take a while. Don't expect to go back to school. And then a few weeks went by and they said, you know what, actually you're progressing pretty quickly. Maybe consider going back to school, but maybe defer the first semester. And then suddenly it became, no, I think you'll be all right. School starts in about 3 weeks, but I think you'll be okay. And so it got easier as the time went on. So the way that I described GBS was that it felt a bit like quicksand. The sensation itself felt like my limbs had fallen asleep, but then like you just started to shake them awake. So they were a little bit tingly and you could sort of feel them, but not very well. And then they rose. So it went from the tips of my fingers up to my shoulders, and then from my toes up towards my hips. When it started to come, my limbs felt heavy, almost similar to jumping on a trampoline and then trying to jump on the ground. And that's what felt like quicksand. I could feel when I went to smile and half of the smile wasn't there anymore. And I could feel like if I poked my face, I could feel all of that. I just lost the ability to manipulate the muscle. I don't know, it was scary. It all happened so quickly that I could remember every sensation of using the muscles. I would go to try and move something, and I would remember how to, but suddenly the function just wasn't there. And I can remember one time in physio, they had me, the way this chair works, it goes up on about an 85-degree angle, and then there's a bar that you hold on to. And all I had to do was stand that extra 5 degrees. It almost felt like when you fall asleep and you wake up in that startled jump because you feel like you're falling. That falling sensation was exactly what it was like to try and stand, just those few inches. The walking came at various stages. So the first couple times of trying to walk, it felt like my knees were going to give out, which was interesting because I otherwise couldn't feel my legs. It just felt like I would try to move them and I could look down and try to move my legs and it just wasn't coming. The muscle tension started to, I think, set in. So I could feel the pain and the ache in my joints, but I couldn't, without someone else moving them for me, I couldn't get that tension to release on its own. And then once the walking really started coming, it really came, and it came really quickly. So I can remember the first time I ran after recovering, and it happened by accident. It happened because I got excited, and I ran towards something, and suddenly I turned to all my friends. I said, "Did you see that? Like, I just ran. I think that was the first time." My case was very well documented, and we shared updates frequently online, which helped, I think, because suddenly my family and friends knew, and I didn't have to reach out, and they didn't think that I had dropped off for no reason. Once a week, we would get together, and my aunts and my uncles and my cousins would get together, and we'd do this big, like, potluck dinner. And that was incredible because everyone dropped everything else in their life to come to me. And I think it was nice for them too, because as hard as it was to see me lose so much so quickly, because they were coming in once a week, they got to really see the progress as it was coming. I can remember the looks they gave me when they first saw me in the wheelchair, and my face was half paralyzed and my hair was crazy. And I can remember the looks on their faces the first time I stood and the first time I walked to them and the first time I was able to hug any of them again. And I can remember one of the nurses said, she said it really early on, those patients, regardless of what they're suffering from, the ones who have the most visitors and the most love, they're the ones who recover the quickest, and that couldn't have been more true with us. My life has changed in, I think, a variety of ways. There is something very humbling about losing all of your muscle function and suddenly having to learn it again. I often made jokes that I was everyone's newest baby. I was sleeping every few hours. I was up all through the night. I needed to be lifted everywhere. I needed to be bathed. I needed to be fed. Everyone did so without complaint, and they made jokes even that I was the patient one, as if them learning how to care for me was any duty towards them. There's nothing to do in hospitals. Like, they're quiet and they're sad, and you just have to talk and distract yourself. And the amount of time I was suddenly able to spend with my family and my sister. We read books out loud, and we stopped talking about just the things that were going on in our immediate life, and we started talking about the deeper things, and we grew so much closer from it in a way that I don't think would have happened without it, and in a way that I don't think either of us had in the past. Be aware, we are rare, please share.